Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of our JCRC Director, Sam Richardson, our Chief Philanthropy Officer, Brad Kaplan, and myself, Daniel Staffenberg, the CEO of the Jewish Community Federation of Richmond, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to join us today for this important security briefing. I'd be lying if I said I was excited to have to hold a briefing like this, but in the light of the last couple weeks, it felt necessary and important. We continue to pray for the recovery of those injured in the Boulder attack and for the families of Sarah Milgram and Yaron Lachinsky, who were killed just a few weeks ago in DC. In light of these disturbing events and the overall rise in anti-Semitic incidents across the country, we know that many in our community are feeling concerned, vulnerable, and scared. We want to begin by offering a message of reassurance. Our community's safety and security has been and will always be our Federation's top priority, and that there are no current threats anywhere in our local community. For 90 years, Federation, thanks to your support, has worked to build, secure, and sustain a thriving and vibrant Jewish community. And we're not planning on stopping that anytime soon. The last 2 years, we've seen a huge boom in Jewish programming, events, activities, and we've welcomed so many who are deeply interested in connecting and renewing their Jewish involvement. Keeping our community safe so that that community building continues remains a critical part of our work. Today, you're going to hear from our colleagues at the Secure Communities Network, with whom we've partnered since 2019. When we became the first regional security program in the country, along with our partners down the road at the United Jewish Communities of the Virginia Peninsula. It is important for you to know that there are no current threats to our greater Richmond Jewish community, and our work here continues. Our community is taking proactive, coordinated steps to ensure the security of our institutions, synagogues, schools, and communal spaces. Working closely with law enforcement, many of whom are on the call today, national partners like SCAN, and local leadership, we've implemented robust safety measures and continue to update them based on the latest intelligence and best practices. Our Federation has invested well over $500,000 in security infrastructure since 2019. And as a result, we have what we feel is a strong community security system. We will continue to strengthen that even as we pray that our future, and soon, no longer requires it. I want to ask you to stay tuned at the end of this webinar to learn about a new investment we will make in the coming days and how you can play a key role in creating a community of vibrancy and security. You're going to hear today about the critical role of training, awareness, and preparedness that is needed during these difficult times. Please, please take the time to get trained and learn about the critical skills you need to keep yourself, your family, and our community safe. You can do so by visiting jewishrichmond.org/security, and please sign up for trainings today. It will save a life. As my buddy Dave Brackens likes to say, security is a team sport. Today's briefing is part of our ongoing commitment to keep our community informed, prepared, and united. Together we remain vigilant and we remain strong. The time to live a vibrant, robust, and thriving Jewish life out loud and proud has never been more important. The tools we share today will help us do just that. I want to take a quick second to thank the law enforcement partners that are on the call today. Chief Venuti, Associate Vice President for Public Safety at VCU, Michael Feinmel, the Deputy County Manager for Public Safety at Henrico County, and Captain Terry Sullivan, our good friend from Hanover County. These are just a few of the law enforcement partners that have reached out and we've been in touch with over the past couple weeks. Additionally, I've been in touch on a regular basis with the governor and the Attorney General's team, and they remain committed to working side by side with us to secure our community and all those who may be in threat of hate. Today, we're going to hear from Michael Masters, Deputy Director of SCAN, our Regional Security Advisor, Dave Brackens, and then Dr. David Galpern, who will share how we can get involved and support this program. Michael, I'm going to dispense with the big, long, awesome bio and call you a friend and a family member and ask you to take it from here.
Thank you, Danny, and I really do appreciate the opportunity to join you here today, and I echo Danielle's sentiments that I wish that we weren't having to gather, but unfortunately, security is a reality for our community in today's day and age. Among the victims of the attack in Boulder, Colorado, as many know, was Barbara Steinmetz, who survived the Holocaust as a child. And among the many things that ran through my mind as our team was responding to the attack, one thought that stood out to me was about Barbara. Surviving one catastrophe as a child, to be faced with the same hate and violence roughly 8 decades later in a different form and at a different time and place, but the same hate. Within moments of being notified of the attack, our team was very focused on supporting the local security professionals as well as law enforcement and sharing verified intelligence information with key partners from federal allies in Washington, D.C., the Department of Justice, the White House, and the FBI, to local security professionals across our network, to include your security professional, my colleague and friend, Dave Brackens. We are incredibly fortunate to have created, built, and resourced this network of professionals nationally and in individual communities like in Richmond with Dave. We know that you cannot buy insurance for a car accident after the accident has happened, and the same is true with security in our Jewish community. The investment needs to be made before, and thankfully, given your leadership, and I want to commend Daniel and your federation, the lay and professional leaders, that investment has been made. It's now time that we make sure that we recognize how important it is. We have learned that bad actors don't respect federation boundaries. And for those of us who have served in law enforcement on this call, we certainly know that bad actors don't respect city, town, county, country boundaries either. So it's vital that we respond in a swift, organized, and efficient manner. I want to recognize and thank the members of law enforcement, just as Daniel did, who are with us today. These are men and women that run towards the sound of gunfire, that distinguish themselves every single day. It is vitally important that as a community that under a heightened threat level, as we are, as a Jewish community, that we are standing with them and supporting them. And part of that means ensuring that our own security apparatus is 100% top notch. The extraordinary leadership that we saw in Colorado, especially in Boulder, should be recognized for their swift, coordinated, and courageous response from local police to federal partners. We know from the relationships in Richmond and across the state that we can expect the same should we be impacted. And while we cannot always prevent hate from striking, we can choose how do we prepare and respond. Doing so allows us in moments of crisis to bring order, in the face of fear to bring resolve, and in the face of hate to bring resiliency. This will allow us to overcome our adversaries to continue to live Jewish lives, and that is exactly the value of the partnership we have in Richmond. I want to share a bit about the threat environment that we're facing. I'm happy to talk a bit about the response in Boulder as well, because much of the response in Boulder has been tested and tried through a variety of incidents. It is the same response mechanisms that would be initiated were something to happen in Richmond, locally supported by the Federation, nationally supported by the Secure Community Network. And while we wish we did not have to respond to events and incidents, we are positioned to do so. And that's the value of the system that we have built as a community in partnership with law enforcement. The lessons here are no different than what we learned from our liturgy as children. Just take the story of Noah and the ark. We all have learned, and we teach if we have children, our children or grandchildren. When did Noah build the ark? Before it began to rain. We have worked together to build an ark, and it is essential, for we are on some very rough and even angry seas. In terms of the intelligence that we are looking at, across the hall from me is our Jewish Security Operations Command Center. It is staffed by a team of intelligence analysts 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Every single Jewish facility that we have identified in the United States, over 12,600 of them, are logged into that system with an invisible geofence around them. We are intaking 18,000 data feeds, monitoring the surface, deep, and dark web, looking for threats every single day. Following the May shooting outside the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C., our analysts identified approximately 6,000 violent threats targeting the Jewish community posted on social media in just a 1-week period. That's over double the number of negative, offensive, or hateful or violent posts the week before the attack. And the numbers have increased since the Boulder incident, and we anticipate this to continue. There are troubling and clear parallels between the attacks in Washington and Boulder. In both cases, online reactions were immediate and glorifying, portraying the attackers as martyrs, religious figures, and revolutionaries. AI-generated imagery cast them in sanctified terms, while calls to keep the momentum going urged others to take the war home. We have heard the direct calls for action to free Palestine and globalize the Intifada, and that call is being answered by individuals like we saw in Washington, D.C. and Boulder. The speed, scale, and tone of the responses reflects the brutal, unrelenting hatred of our community, ancient in its hatred, but modern in its tactics. So when we identify those violent posts, over 6,000 I mentioned, each one of them is action with our law enforcement and public safety partners. If we identify any post that is impactful to your community in Richmond, it is being shared with Dave. It is being shared, who is then in turn sharing it with local, state, and federal law enforcement, as we at SCN nationally are sharing that with our federal law enforcement partners in Washington, D.C. We have had a 30% increase in threats reported to our duty desk since the Washington, D.C. shooting. At the same time, we've dramatically increased our threat monitoring in the online space. I should note that while the attacks themselves are obviously tragic and the loss of life is deep and impactful and hurtful, these events are not necessarily a surprise. We have been issuing strategic warnings for over a year that the war in Gaza would have serious domestic implications, including a surge in anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic, and anti-Israel attacks, many of which have now materialized. Our analysts assess that as the conflict continued, Jewish and Israeli communities in the U.S. would face elevated threat levels from pro-Palestinian, anti-Israeli, and candidly pro-Hamas or pro-Hezbollah violent extremists. Over the past 20 months, every analytic brief that SCN has produced, each of which has been shared with Dave, each of which has been shared with our local, state, and federal law enforcement, has warned of this rising threat exacerbated by online incitement from Iranian link groups and designated foreign terrorist organizations such as Hamas, Hezbollah, and ISIS, all of which have promoted and justified violence against Jewish civilians globally under the banner of retaliation for Israel's military action in Gaza. We have seen this across the spectrum, each of these with unique perpetrators, these attacks, but nonetheless, all of them sharing the same ideological trigger: rage against military actions in Gaza, channeled into violence against visibly Jewish targets domestically. The April 13th arson attack on Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's residence, the murder of Yaron and Sarah outside the Capitol Jewish Museum, and the June 1st firebombing in Boulder all reflect this pattern. Each attacker framed their actions as retaliation for Israel's military actions in Gaza. We cannot divorce that from the hatred that we are facing. So when people say they're making a political statement, it is tied to a very real direct threat against our community. And we are cognizant of that. We are focused on it. We are working with our federal partners in law enforcement and prosecutors on this. These acts didn't occur in a vacuum. Across these cases, SCN analysts have identified online praise, glorification, and calls for replication, which is raising our concern about copycat attacks. It is why it is so critical that we have a security initiative like we do in Richmond, which is being able to work with our facilities, assess them, train the community. And I would ask each of you on this call, the over 100 of you, those of you not in law enforcement, because our law enforcement partners train every single day, to please avail yourself of the training that Dave is going to talk about. Groups such as the Students for Justice in Palestine, Within Our Lifetime, Unity of Fields, and online propaganda hubs such as the emerging ISNAD network consistently amplify messaging aligned with Hamas, Hezbollah, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and Iranian-backed information operations. They are encouraging action. My grandmother used to have a phrase: when people tell you who they are, listen and respond. Our adversaries are calling themselves to action. We must call ourselves to action now as well, to make the investment of time and resources to serve our community to ensure that Jewish life can continue. Since October 7th, SCN has produced and disseminated nearly 200 threat bulletins and intelligence situation reports, coordinating numerous national or regional briefings with law enforcement and Jewish security leaders. Just last week, coordinating with Major City Chiefs Association, Major County Sheriffs of America, the National Fusion Center Association, and with representatives from the White House, FBI, Department of Justice, and Department of Homeland Security on the call, we coordinated a briefing related to the events in Boulder and changing security guidance that we feel is necessary in today's day and age. Our efforts have helped prevent attacks, mobilize resources, inform law enforcement, and protect our community. But the pace, scale, and complexity of the current threat environment requires more work and more commitment nationally and locally. Each of us is a part of the security of our community. In this environment, our work and the collaboration with other partners, from law enforcement to those in the Jewish space, has never been more critical. Please know that we at SCN nationally, and working in partnership with federations such as yours locally and with professionals like Dave on the ground, are working diligently to keep our events and our community spaces protected. But our greatest force multiplier is all of you on this call. So please get involved. It is essential that we do not allow those who would seek to frighten us into submission a victory. To do this, we have to ensure proper, appropriate, and effective security measures are in place to both ensure safety and facilitate a sense of safety, so that our Jewish community can continue to exist and thrive, so that our American values of religious freedom and democracy can continue to exist. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'll turn it back over to Danny.
Thanks, Michael. I think a little sobering, but you're going to stay on for some questions after. Thank you so much. I'm now honored to bring on my friend, my colleague, someone I've learned a ton from, Dave Brackens, to share a little bit about our local response.
Thank you, Daniel. A quick introduction of myself. My name is Dave Brackens. I'm the Regional Security Advisor with Secure Community Network. We have partnered with the Jewish Federation in Richmond, as well as the Peninsula Federation. Having said that, though, thanks to the graciousness of the different federations and our SCN leadership, we also reach out to underserved communities across the Commonwealth. I am a resource for you. I will put my contact information in the Q&A here shortly, so that if you're interested, you may reach out to me directly with questions, comments, or requests for anything, training, assessments, whatever you would need. A lot of things that we do as RSAs. Primary for me is my liaison with law enforcement, state, local, and federal law enforcement. And I would like to point out that in addition to the folks that Daniel mentioned, we also have Sidney Collier, the Deputy Chief of Police for the City of Richmond, on this call. Frank Carpenter, the Chief of Police for Chesterfield County Police Department, and Special Agent Dante Robinson, Virginia State Police, great partners at the Richmond Fusion Center. The relationship that I have developed with law enforcement in this state is such that on October 7th, the first calls I received were from my law enforcement partners, the chief of police from one of our major cities, and the special agent in charge, the FBI office here in Richmond, asking me, what can you do? What can I do for you? And here is what we've already done. That is the type of relationship that we want to build across the Commonwealth. I have contacts from Roanoke and Blacksburg down to Virginia Beach, all the way north to Fredericksburg, Winchester. So we have those touch points when we need them. I do, as Michael mentioned, pass intel information from our JSOC to my law enforcement partners, whether it be a trend that we have seen, whether it be information about specific individuals within the Commonwealth who might be making some concerning or threatening statements for them to follow up on. And we have been successful in making sure that some of these folks, if nothing else, somebody goes to talk to them to make sure that they understand, hey, we know where you are and we are watching you. So some of the other things I do here, I work with all of the community to conduct threat assessments on your facilities. Some of these assessments are informal, where we just walk through the building and I talk about things that might be able to be improved. Some of them are very formal assessments, what we call a threat vulnerability risk assessment. This is important if you plan to apply for the Nonprofit Security Grant Program. For those of you unaware of it, the NSGP program is a FEMA managed program that provides target hardening funds for nonprofits across the country. Since SCN established our presence here in Virginia, from 2020 until now, we have received, in just the greater Richmond area, $4,572,518 in grant dollars for agencies, schools, synagogues to improve their security, to harden their buildings, to hire either private security or off-duty law enforcement for their protection. My next phase of help here is training. SCN has a huge catalog of training. Our core trainings are Stop the Bleed, a FEMA grant, a FEMA program that came out of the Sandy Hook school shooting to address serious bleeding incidents. Countering active threat training, which is our version of active shooter training. We call it countering active threat because we talk about the multiple means of attack. And our Be Aware introduction to situational awareness. There are many others, and I can provide them to you, your friends, your neighbors, your organization, your business. You just need to reach out to me. In addition to those things, we've worked on, real quick numbers here for our training. Since 2020, we've had 135 trainings in the general greater Richmond area, and we've trained 2,259 folks. That's not enough. There are more people out there that need this training. And if you haven't heard about it, please contact me and I can give you more information. Additionally, I help folks develop emergency operation plans and security plans for the facilities. And then as an add-on to that, we work on conducting drills, taking the plans, practicing them so that folks can realize, okay, this plan works, this plan doesn't work. We need to adapt it to make sure it does. Everything from an active threat plan, after I've done several after Shabbat services where everyone gets out and we walk out through emergency exits. People know in theory where an emergency exit is. They may not know what's on the other side of the door. I want to make sure they know that. So these are the types of things that I will help work with anyone who can contact me. That's about all I have. I will be here on the call. I'll be answering questions. Daniel, I'll pass it back to you, sir.
Thank you, Dave. And I'll tell you that we are deeply appreciative of all you do and all of the training we provide. I'm seeing some of the great questions coming in, and we will answer those shortly. I want to pass it on to our friend and lay leader, David Galpern, to talk a little bit about, other than training, how can you support our work?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm David Galpern, Financial Resource Development Chair of the Federation. I want to thank you all for being here. I wish we were all gathering under better circumstances, but I'm also incredibly proud that in moments like this, when our community is feeling shaken, we show up together. It's incredible to see the numbers here. The recent attacks on Jewish communities, both here and in the US and around the world, are painful reminders that anti-Semitism is alive, dangerous, and evolving. And it's not someone else's problems, it's ours. These aren't just headlines. These are places like ours. These are families who just want to pray and learn and celebrate, just like we do here in Richmond. When we talk about community security, we're talking about more than just guards and gates. We're talking about peace of mind, the freedom to gather without fear, the confidence to show up as proud Jews, visibly, vocally, and without hesitation. And that kind of security doesn't happen on its own. It happens because we decide it matters, because we invest in it. Since October 7th, Federation has stepped up in major ways. We've invested in our community's security infrastructure, including security assessments, event coverage, training, coordination with law enforcement, and more. But here's the thing, it's not a one-time need. This is the new reality. If we want to continue protecting Jewish life here in Richmond, we have to make sure our response is sustainable. So today, I'm going to ask you for help in two very clear ways. Firstly, we need to raise $100,000 this year to meet our immediate security needs. These are dollars that protect real people right now. Secondly, we're launching our long-term vision. We're looking to raise $2.5 million to endow this work permanently. That money will allow this protection to go on in perpetuity. This is how we protect our community, not just for today, but for generations to come. We all have different ways of showing up. Some of us advocate, some of us volunteer, some of us lead, but one thing we can all do is give. And when we give, we're not just donating, we're taking action. We're sending a message that our community is worth protecting and that fear will never define us. Thank you again for all that you've already done and everything that we will do together in strength and in solidarity.
Thank you, David, and thank you to all of those who will support and continue to support us and the community. I am going to bring Michael on as well, and Dave. And I'm also going to bring on Sam Richardson. Many of you have met Sam. He's our JCRC, our Jewish Community Relations Council Director. If it's okay, gentlemen, what I'm going to do is go through a couple questions, and then we will go from there. From Susan, what is the appropriate activity for an officer stationed outside a synagogue or an agency? Is sitting in the squad car enough?
I'll take that one if that's okay. You need to understand that that officer is working for you, for your organization, and they need to be briefed on what it is you expect of them. You should meet with every officer when they first show up, make sure they understand the situation, why you have had to hire them, and then what it is that you would like them to be doing. Sitting in the car for them is tactically unsound, but that's something I can deal with on another end. But you want them out moving around. You want them watching the entrances. But again, if they don't know, if no one has talked to them, they don't know what to expect. They're just going to fall back to what they would normally do.
Communication is the key. Thank you, Dave. Michael, this one was specifically for you. When people tell you who they are, believe them. They are calling into action. Now we need to call into action, you said. In addition to the security training and obviously giving, what do you suggest that we do as volunteers, as leaders, as people who want to get into action here?
So I am biased. I come from a family that has been involved with the Federation system for 80 years. I think that the federations, I know that they are essential conveners and coordinators of Jewish life across our communities. So I would suggest, becoming as involved as you can to support the work of Federation writ large, right? There's nothing that we do as a community, from sending kids to the JCC, on the campus in Richmond, to day camp, to school, to going to synagogue, that is possible in today's day and age without good security. So I would say to you to please get involved with the Federation to help us resource this initiative and this program so that we can then spend the other dollars on those areas of Jewish life that we need security to exist for in order to have. I also, since I have the floor, I cannot stress the training enough. I've personally seen it with my own family be impactful, to include having a now 10-year-old daughter, but that it was 7 at the time, that there was an active shooter event that she was at with her mother, and she knew what to do because of the training. And we hear this time and time again. You can never be trained too much. Beyond that, though, I'll say a few things. Daniel and I have both been invited to go to Washington, D.C. in a few weeks for an emergency fly-in. Our Federation system is working diligently to educate and advocate for roughly $1 billion in increased federal funding for security measures that can impact our JCCs, our camps, our schools, our federations. So with the voice, and I may be getting into parts of Sam's pitch here with JCRC, but so he'll excuse me if I do, we need to make sure our elected officials know the security threats that we face and be educated to them, to include advocating for more resources for law enforcement. I served most of the last 20 years in law enforcement, to include serving as the chief of staff of the Chicago Police Department. Most of our police agencies across the United States, they do not have the number of officers or the resources that they need. That impacts their ability to be helpful to us as a community. I know that the law enforcement leaders on this call do everything that they can. It's important for us to speak up for them so that they have the tools, training, and resources that they need through federal dollars in order to have the equipment and tools that they need to do their work as well.
Thank you, Michael. And Sam, I know that we're trying to put together as big a delegation as we can. How do they connect on if they want to join us in DC on the 25th and 26th?
Sure, I apologize, I'll bring that up. I will put the link for registration into the chat. And then if anybody has any questions, they can feel free to reach out to me directly. I'll also put my email address. And if we have enough, we'll coordinate some carpooling and such. And I also have a list of hotels so that if people are planning to stay overnight, that they can choose what works within how far they want to walk basically to the venue is the option, as well as the price points. And we're looking in the registration, you will be asked for the name of your congressional representative as well, and well, by the state, you'll know your senators. And so there will be opportunity. The Federation is going to set up appointments with senators and congressional representatives, providing us with information as well as information we're bringing from our own community to speak directly with those officials so that we can let them know not only what our need is from a technical perspective, but also how we're feeling in real time, which is something that I've discovered many of our officials don't realize because they're not living in our houses and in our shoes. So we need to let them know exactly how we're feeling.
Thank you very much. I want to be clear with that fly-in. This is not to talk about Medicaid, immigrate. This is specifically about security for the Jewish community. So we're happy to have you with us. A couple more questions coming in that I want to answer. I think this one's a quick one for you, David. Have all the synagogues and agencies in our community participated in training at this point? This could be dangerous.
Yes, they have. However, one thing I didn't mention about training is perishable, no matter what type of training it is. What we're doing is building muscle memory, and the muscle we're working on is your brain. It needs to be repeated. It needs to be constantly repeated so that you don't stop and think in an emergency, what do I need to do? Or what did Dave say 3 months, 6 months, 2 years ago? So we're going to be continuing this training, and we're getting ready to ramp up prior to the High Holy Days. I put in the Q&A my contact information, email address, as well as my phone number for anyone who needs to contact me.
And for those as well, you can always go to jewishrichmond.org/security, sign up for training if you want to host something in your home. That's the best way to get to Dave. From Lauren, is there a credible, if there is a credible threat, how will we go about notifying the staff members of the organization so they can prepare, be aware? Talk a little bit about our system in place, Dave.
Well, the first thing I'm going to be doing is notifying the appropriate law enforcement agencies. SCN also has a mass notification system we call SCN Alert. I have several different groups in that. I have one for Tidewater, one for the Peninsula, one for Richmond. I can pass information directly to an individual or to a group of individuals or an organization, or I can put information out across the Commonwealth. I have a subgroup that is just my security contacts that I work with every 2 weeks. We have across the Commonwealth, every 2 weeks, we have a meeting, a virtual meeting on Zoom to discuss current issues, trainings, whatever subjects folks happen to bring. That group will also get a notification so that the appropriate agencies, the appropriate organizations are alerted to the threat information that we have.
Thank you, Dave. Is there training specifically designed for different ages of children, teens? Is this training appropriate for kids, etc.? I don't know if Michael or Dave, who wants to handle that one.
Michael, I'm gonna pass that to you because I know we're working on something.
Fair enough. So, one of the things that we've worked to do over the last several years is really try to be sequential to train Jewish professionals, staff, or faculty as we work our way to kids. We've just recently rolled out camp security and safety training for camp leadership and counselors, et cetera, and most of our counselors happen to be younger. The reality is, we're working on an additional curriculum for kids of different ages. For most schools or institutions that have a good lockdown drill, and this is where Dave, being on the local, on the ground level, can be very handy. It's as simple as a lockdown drill. There's not too much different about a lot of the training that we're doing, and we're not trying to confuse kids by overburdening them with too much training. So it's simple lockdown drill. And I'll tell you what I do with I have 2 daughters. They're both a little bit older now, but since they've been very, very young, we've played the what if game. When they go into a restaurant or a grocery store or a coffee shop, where are the exits? What would you do if you needed to get out? And this is not to scare them, this is to empower them. Simple activities like that can be very, very impactful. And it's creating exactly what Dave said a little bit earlier, which is that muscle memory, which all of us need to have and we all need to work on.
I can say that one of my synagogues actually had me come in for their Sunday school. I did a session for their instructors. I did a session for their parents and the children. Now, of course, the children's session is a little more simplified, but understanding what it is that's expected of them while they're in Sunday school, who they should be listening to, what their plans should be. Very basic for the children. The parents got a little more in depth, and the instructors, of course, got the full course.
So Dave, if I just heard you right, you can make sure that the kids will listen to their parents. Okay, we just may have had a run on training. Any suggestions? This is from our friend Sheila. Any suggestions for our daily interactions with sympathetic, or my guess is more problematic, unsympathetic, non-Jewish neighbors?
I'm when we say unsympathetic, I guess I have a spectrum of when I think about that in my head. I think one of the things that's important for us to do, in which the Federation is uniquely poised to do, is make friends before you need them. I think we recognize, particularly after October 7th, a lot of communities, and Daniel and I have spoken with many, many of our colleagues in federations across the country, that were impacted because, frankly, a lot of the friendships or relationships they thought they had did not exist. And this is where I really do think it requires us to be thoughtful and substantive in our engagements. We are not going to build partnerships law enforcement can't build a partnership of trust by showing up once a year at something, and neither could we think that we could do that as a community either. So it really involves working substantively as a whole community. Our focus at SCN are the individuals that pose a violent threat, and being cognizant of that. And what I would say is, if you identify those individuals, if you see them or you see something related to that, please do report it to law enforcement, to Dave, or through our website, our shared website, our incident reporting portal, so that we can deal with that. I think it's fair to say that hate has no place, and enough is enough. If we see something that is anti-Semitic or hate-filled or potentially violent, please report it.
Our advice here locally, and we definitely have learned who our friends are, and I will say, while Michael is true that some of the ones we thought were gonna stand with us and we had stand beside it weren't there, we do have many friends. Sheila, as I would say, you have to use your best judgment. If there is keffiyeh wearing march going on, I would say do not engage. Don't put yourself in a bad situation. If you have a neighbor at a barbecue block party or something that's asking questions, answer honestly and fairly, and recognize that this is a difficult time. From Sage, Dave, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit. How do those that are connecting with their law enforcement or their security partners at their synagogues or agencies, what should they tell them? How do they know what to tell them? Can you be a resource for them in that? And I think for some, if I'm unreading it, these are law enforcement. They should know what right do I have to tell them what I would expect of them.
Absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, I have contacts across the Commonwealth at every agency, every synagogue, every school who have taken on the role to help with security for their facilities, their organizations, their people. I have talked with those folks, and we just had a meeting last week, and we discussed this conversation, making sure that law enforcement, the ones that actually show up, understand the situation. Tell them what's going on in the world. And one of the members of our last call mentioned that the folks that he briefed weren't aware of the attacks in Colorado or DC. So they had to instruct them and let them know what was going on. That can be an institutional stovepiping situation where if it doesn't affect their jurisdiction or a nearby jurisdiction, they may not pay attention to it. So you want to share whatever you can. If you're aware of things that have happened, let them know about it. If there are things specific to your organization, if there's people that you know you've had trouble with in the past, share that information with them. Normally, this is done by my colleagues. Talk about all threats, though, not just the individual, not just an active threat. Talk about what do we do in case of a fire? What do we do if there's a weather emergency? How do we deal with that? Make sure that they're aware of your plans and what you want to do. That way, if something happens, they know what to expect from you.
I'm going to reinforce what David said and say that our partners on law enforcement are always one. When you thank them for being there and say, hey, can you help us specifically with X or Y? They're looking for that direction and intention. I'm going to speed through a little bit. If your synagogue or agency has not offered in-person training beyond their board or their leadership, that's okay. Please reach out to Dave. His contact info is in the chat, and you can always visit him on jewishrichmond.org security. You can request training. You can design a training in your home, anywhere, any place, almost. Dave will come and train you, and will design training for your need.
Because I have
Michael.
power or a very long extension cord, I can pretty much train anywhere.
Michael, I think this one would be for you. Was there any advance warning from the dark web about the latest events in DC and Boulder?
So first of all, both active investigations still going on, but nothing that would have been actionable or that would have given insight that would have allowed action to be taken, which is why it is so important that we view security as a multi-layered effort. There's an intelligence component, but there is also that physical security component, which is so important on events, activities, day-to-day operations.
Thank you. Andy asked about synagogues beefing up police security for the high holidays. I'm gonna take a little bit of a proactive approach there and say that thankfully under Dave's guidance, we've had an increased presence for high holidays for at least the last 5 or 6 years. And I'm going to also reinforce that there is visual and visible presence, but I will tell you that Dave also coordinates increased awareness on a variety of different levels, seen and unseen, for almost every event that goes through his system. I've been privy to it. There is a security plan in place, and just because you don't see 8 guards out front or 2 guards out front, you may see 1. There is other work being done to secure everybody. We're coming up on 12:45. Let me see. Crisis management plans. I know that Dave is working through all of the agencies to try and work with us to update and make sure that our plans are in place. You can reach out to him and get him working. What are the legal liabilities if a firearm is used for self-defense in a synagogue? Oh boy.
I'm happy to take that one as the resident.
Good, because I wasn't gonna do it.
So the short answer is it depends. We actually have worked at SCN along with security professionals around the country to develop a very good white paper on this. It's called Firearms and the Faithful. It goes through a variety of issues and considerations. It will depend on such things as whether you are part of a formal team, whether the synagogue sanctioned the activity. I will share there is no such thing as a wink and a nod when it comes to people carrying firearms in synagogue. And I will also say, for the benefit of Dave and myself, as well as our other law enforcement professionals, there is no magic halo that you have above your head when we are responding as law enforcement that tells us whether you're a good guy or a bad guy if you have a gun out and we're responding to an active threat situation. It is very important that if that consideration is being made, that you review with an attorney, with your boards, with your organization, the liability issues, the local law, and the coordination with both Dave as the Jewish security professional, as well as law enforcement, to have a thoughtful, articulable plan in place.
I will also say, and Sam can reinforce, I believe there was legislation passed recently that allows a synagogue to say that weapons and firearms are not allowed in their building if they so choose.
Correct.
Yeah.
There was never a prohibition, but it was affirmed.
I see there's a couple questions I'm gonna pass. We will get to all of them. We will get a recording and we will reach out to you with further questions. I want to thank Michael, especially traveling to Richmond all the way from Chicago, and for your partnership for the last, what feels like it's been well over 6 years now, and for bringing Dave and the outstanding work that SCAN does. We look forward to welcoming you here to Richmond in the next couple months with your new board chair, and letting you know all that Richmond has to offer. Dave, I expect you're going to get really busy here, and that is exactly what we want. Dave is a wonderful resource with decades of knowledge, insight, and guidance. Protecting the Richmond Jewish community is a passion of his, and we are grateful for that. Sam, I hope you have a huge delegation to DC with you. I want to take just a second and give a couple more updates and before we finish. The Federation has been grateful to JF&A, our national organization, and the Tepper Foundation. We recently deployed over $100,000 in grants directly to agencies and synagogues to secure those agencies with young kids at programming. We have just been given another grant of $33,000, which we will be deploying in the next month or two to those institutions. We've also been given a challenge. If we raise another $33,000, we will get another $33,000 directly to offset the increased costs of security guards, monitoring, and guidance for security in the community. If you can give $18, $180, $1,800, please do so at jewishrichmond.org. You can give directly to the security infrastructure. I do want to, with that said, take one step back and remind the community that we are grateful that we have raised millions of dollars every year through unrestricted funding that allowed our community to be the leader in becoming a part of this security network. It is our annual campaign that has supported this work, has hired Dave, has allowed us to partner with SCAN for the last 6 years, and those fundings are vital. They will continue to be that going forward. Lastly, this is not the time to shrink from our Jewish lives. It is the time to redouble our efforts. I know that there is fear. Some of you may not have been to a synagogue or an agency or stopped by the J in the last little while. Now is the time to do so. These agencies are working hard. There is dynamic, vibrant, interesting program throughout, and we encourage you to step in. We will do everything we can to keep you safe. We will do everything we can to welcome you with open arms, to care for each other as we have for the last 90 years as a federation, and for sure for the last 612 days. We need you, and we cannot let those who would ask us and want us to shrink from our Jewish lives to win. And that's the best way to do that. Thank you all for joining us. There was well over 110, 115 people on this call. We will have a recording which will be available if you'd like to see it. Again, I'd encourage you to visit jewishrichmond.org security for training, to reach out to Dave to understand what role you can play in creating our community safety net. Thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful day and a great week ahead.